Now let's look specifically at the requests that Paul makes. The first thing that he says in verse 16 is his prayer for the Ephesians is that God would grant you, according to the riches of His glory, to be strengthened with might through His Spirit in the inner man. Now there is much that is said in the New Testament about the Holy Spirit, and there's much that's said in the religious world at large about the Holy Spirit. But sadly, a lot of what's said about the Spirit is inaccurate and is not really according to the Scripture. Some folks take passages on the Holy Spirit completely out of their context and completely out of the larger context of New Testament teaching and ascribe to the Spirit certain activities in today's world that the New Testament does not support. The Spirit was certainly active in miraculous ways back in the days of Christ and the apostles. And many people have falsely assumed that the Holy Spirit still acts in the same miraculous ways today. Well, we don't have the time today, nor is it a part of our study of Ephesians, to go into a lengthy discussion about every aspect and every role of the Spirit today and what the Spirit does and what the Spirit does not do. But let's focus on just a couple of things that are germane to this discussion in Ephesians. And one of those is the fact that the Spirit dwells within the Christian. The Bible affirms that in passages like Galatians chapter 4, verse 6, where Paul wrote, "Because you are sons, God sent forth the Spirit of His Son into our hearts, crying, Abba, Father." In 1 Corinthians 6, verse 19, Paul said, "Know ye not that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have from God, and that you are not your own? Therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are His." So the Bible affirms that the Spirit dwells within the Christian. Now there's a lot of discussion in religious circles and in the Church of the Lord about how the Spirit dwells within the Christian. Well, again, it's not my purpose to go into that in a lot of detail today. I'll just say this by way of fact. As far as the details and the mechanics of how the Spirit dwells within the body of the Christian, let me put it this way. I know that I have a human spirit. The Bible affirms that I have a spirit within me, my human spirit. James 2:26 says the body without the spirit is dead. So when my human spirit leaves my body, that constitutes physical death. And so I know I have a spirit within me, my human spirit. You know, I can't explain to you the mechanics of how my spirit dwells within my body. I don't know how that is, but I know that my spirit dwells within me because the Bible affirms it. I would argue the same regarding the Holy Spirit. I can't explain to you all of the mechanics of how the Holy Spirit dwells within the Christian, but I'm not going to deny that He does simply because I can't explain the mechanics of it. The Bible simply affirms His presence, affirms His indwelling in the Christian in the passages that I've mentioned before and in others as well. But I do know this, as I pointed out in previous lessons and in this one already, that it's not miraculous, that it doesn't involve any direct revelations of truth into a Christian's mind. The Holy Spirit has completed His process of revelation. And so we don't get nudges from the Spirit. It's not anything that you feel and perceive through your senses. It's something that the Bible affirms. And the Bible affirms that the Spirit dwells within the Christian. And as long as we stay with the language of the New Testament, certainly we cannot be faulted for that. And so the Bible affirms that, and so we affirm it. But affirming also what the Bible teaches, that this is a non-miraculous indwelling of the Spirit. Now, Paul has already mentioned the Holy Spirit in this letter, and he mentions the Spirit often in the book of Ephesians, and that's why the topic has come up so much in this series, is because it's a part of the book. Paul mentioned earlier in chapter 1 that the Spirit dwelling within the Christian serves as a seal. Remember that from chapter 1, verse 13. You were sealed with the Holy Spirit of promise. A seal, of course, a mark of ownership. that which identifies something as genuine, as authentic, as actually belonging to the owner. Well, the Holy Spirit serves as a seal in the Christian, serves as a mark of ownership that we are genuinely belonging to God. And the Spirit is an earnest of our inheritance, a down payment, if you will, a personal guarantee that God will keep His promise of future reward. Now, we certainly possess the ability to void that contract and lose that if we so choose, but God's going to always keep up His end of our agreement, our covenant. And the Holy Spirit is a personal guarantee of that promise being kept. Now here Paul prays back in chapter 3 and desires that the Ephesian Christians be strengthened through the Spirit dwelling in the inner man. Paul had written that in 2 Corinthians chapter 4 verse 16, that though our outward man is perishing, the inward man is renewed day by day. And Paul desires that these Christians be strengthened, that they find the ability, the strength, the courage, the personal fortitude to be able to embrace these spiritual blessings that he's been talking about and to be faithful and loyal to God all of their lives. And to whatever degree the Holy Spirit strengthens the inner man, it's said that Christ dwells, takes up His residence in the believer. That you be strengthened by His Spirit in the inner man, that Christ may dwell in your hearts by faith. And so Christ is said in a number of places to dwell within the believer. Here in Ephesians 3:17, Paul spoke of Christ in you, the hope of glory. Colossians 1 verse 27. Galatians 2 verse 20 said, is where Paul wrote that I've been crucified with Christ. Nevertheless I live, yet not I, but Christ lives in me. And so the Bible affirms the presence of Christ in the believer. And so there is a connection, you see, between the Holy Spirit dwelling in the Christian and Jesus dwelling in the Christian. What is that connection? Well, you remember in chapter 2, verse 22, Paul wrote that we are being built up as a dwelling place for God by the Spirit. Notice that, Ephesians 2:22, in whom you also are being built together for a dwelling place of God in or by the Spirit. And so deity dwells in the Christian through the Spirit, according to Ephesians 2, verse 22. And Paul continues by mentioning this strengthening and what it can bring about. And he says this strengthening ultimately results in one being rooted and grounded in love. Those are important terms, rooted and grounded. It speaks of spiritual stability, the ability to withstand the storms of life. The word rooted reminds you of the big oak tree with its roots deep down in the ground, providing its stability to withstand storms. The psalmist wrote about those being like a tree planted by rivers of water, Psalm 1 verse 3. The idea of stability. And the same is true with the term grounded. Another indication of a strong foundation. Jesus talked about the importance of a building foundation and a strong one in Matthew 7 verses 24 through 27 when He spoke about the wise and foolish builders and how the wise builder was the one who built on a solid foundation. And so when Paul says that he prayed that they would be strengthened so that they might be rooted and grounded in love, that's the idea that he's trying to get across, is that he wants them to be spiritually stable and secure. And what will enable them to do that is this rooting and grounding in love that comes as a result of the strength that they receive from God. And so love is a vitally important part of the stability of the Christian life. Paul wrote about the importance of love in 1 Corinthians 13. We don't have the time to look at that entire chapter, but we can at least highlight the importance of love from 1 Corinthians 13 verses 1 through 3. Paul wrote, though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I have become sounding brass